Okay, awesome. Thanks everyone for making it to this session. I know we're kind of near the finish line here. My name's Greg Clunies. I'm a senior analytics engineer at Surfline. And today I'm talking to you about how we're using JSON schema to set the stage for product analytics inside our DBT project and help with our event data quality. So quick agenda, I'm just going to talk about what is Surfline for those of you who don't know, aren't from Southern California, don't surf, what we do. Talk about product analytics at Surfline, how we do it, why we do it. Talk about some of the struggles we've had with event data. If other people have worked with event data, segment data in particular, they might feel these pains. I'm going to introduce an open source project that I've been working on and that we use in production at Surfline called Reflect, which kind of centers around this concept of enforceable and extendable event contracts. We'll hop into a little demo. I'll actually show you how this kind of works at a high level, and then we'll have some time for questions, okay? So first off, what is Surfline? It's actually called Surfline because it started in the 1980s, and you would call in on the line and get your surf report for the day. But today, Surfline is a global surf forecasting platform. We run a website, iOS and Android app that delivers surf forecasts at 10,000 plus spots worldwide. We have live cameras at almost 1,000 of those spots now. We run our forecasting platform every 6 hours, issuing a new forecast, and 16 days into the future. And then we have maps and charts so that really advanced surf nerds like me can dive into what's happening in the ocean environment. And then finally, with those cameras, we let our users, our surfers, relive their best sessions by watching their rewinds in front of our cameras. If you have an Apple Watch, you can go surfing in front of our camera. It'll track when it thinks you're surfing, and when you get back to your phone, it'll just send you the clips. And so while it's our business to tell surfers when the waves are going to be good, where the waves are going to be good, as a business, we also have to understand how these surfers are engaging with our product and consuming these assets. So really, the big assets at Surfline are the surf spots we're issuing forecasts at, and the cameras themselves. They're the huge drivers for our subscription business. And so we collect events about what these users are doing. So in this example here, it's just a played webcam event. We're just saying this user's looking at this forecast at this spot. This webcam is playing, they're watching it live, capturing some other context about this. And really, it's super important for us to capture this data in a reliable and consistent manner so that we can use it. Everyone's done the dreaded group by some field, and there's 15 variations of really the same thing. And so we've definitely lived that pain. And really the important thing to think about with all these events is defining that definition of what the event is, what it's named, its properties, its data types, all that stuff is what we refer to as a schema or a contract. Has been kind of the in vogue term, data contracts. But before we kind of evolved to the solution we're at now, we've felt a lot of struggles around event data. Namely, just we didn't have defined processes or conventions around how do we name our events. What's the schema for this event? How do we ensure it's always this and that everybody who instruments this event knows what the schema is? How do we version events? So if we decide to make a change to a schema for an event or change its contract, how do we go from version 1 to version 2? And how do people know which versions are available? Right? Second, we had big issues around awareness and maintenance of event data. So product is running some new feature. They want to capture some new property on an event, say around played webcam. They just add it. They don't tell the data team, or better yet, they delete a property on an event, which deletes all of a sudden the values in the table in your warehouse are going to null. You don't know why. Something fails inside your dbt project, and you have an executive saying, what's going on here, right? Everyone's felt that pain. And then lastly, kind of selfishly, as someone on a data team, like I do not want to write staging models, sources, and documentation for hundreds of product analytics events. Like that is literally the most boring work I can imagine doing as an analytics engineer. And then finally, we were really struggling with who owns product analytics, right? It says product analytics in the name, so product might be a good place to start, but engineering writes the code for it. But when there's a problem with the data, the first people that get contacted are the data team. So we were trying to figure out what's a way that we can build some sort of like shared responsibility, right? And so this is how I kind of started working on this idea in this open source project called Reflect. And really, Reflect has two pillars, which is like data quality and an ability to enforce it. And second, an extendability of once you define these contracts, like as a data team, how do I speed up my work based on these contracts, right? A little bit of a disclaimer here, like Reflect is what we use in production at Surfline. This is not the only solution. It is the solution that works for us and our stack. We use Segment, Snowflake, dbt extensively. It's not a magic bullet. Like you still have to plan and like collaborate with your team members. But what it has done is given us tooling and a process to follow so that we can kind of bring those teams and their opinions and what's important to them together and like build consensus and then get the benefits of that. And so then the second thing is like, okay, we've defined all these contracts. Our data quality is improving incrementally as we kind of graduate to this new world. Can we never write a source, a staging model, and documentation for our product analytics again? And the answer kind of shortly, and I'll get to this later, is yes. So really, a Reflect project looks shockingly like a dbt project. It is just a GitHub repo, and the key things are, instead of dbt project.yaml, we just have reflect project.yaml. We have a folder for schemas, which holds the event contracts. We have a folder called artifacts that holds dbt artifacts. A schema, which is shown on the right here, just defines what goes in an event. So going back to the example of played webcam on Surfline, right? We're just saying, hey, this is the name. I have a pointer. This is the name. Here's a description. Here are the properties that are allowed to be collected inside this event. Everything has a description in plain English so that someone in the business, a consumer of this data, can instantly say, okay, I understand what this represents and how it should be used and how it shouldn't be used, because that's often the most dangerous thing. Someone thinks an event means one thing and it doesn't mean that thing at all, right? Okay, so we're able to define these contracts, but how do we make sure everyone's following the same rules, right? I think it should be called played webcam. Somebody else thinks it should be called played surfcam. Someone thinks it should be called played underscore webcam, right? Again, we're just trying to enforce consistency and reliability in the instrumentation and how we define this. So what we have inside a Reflect project is some basic configuration, particularly around how we name events, how we name properties, and what are the valid data types inside our events. And with this, we can take any schema or contract we've defined in our project and lint it with a lint command. This little select statement looks pretty familiar for most of us. It is very similar in dbt. Like you select models, in Reflect you select schemas. And you can select a collection of schemas and run the command against multiple at the same time. And so with a linter like this, you can put this inside the CI suite of the repo. And as a PR is open, someone's saying, hey, I'm proposing some new changes to this event. The first thing that happens is that linter gets kicked off. It finds the changed schemas that are happening inside this PR and lints all of them and ensures those rules are followed at the outset. So if those rules aren't followed, the first thing I know as a reviewer, or someone on the data team knows as a reviewer, is, hey, this is what you have to do just to conform and play by the rules. Because it's a PR workflow, we have thankfully banished Google Spreadsheets as a medium to define our tracking plan or our event instrumentation. But the nice thing we've kind of stumbled into here is like Adam here is on our engineering team, on our subscription squad at Surfline. He's making some proposition. Andreas is a product manager saying, hey, I've seen some events that use properties like this, and the naming convention we're using there is different to here. Maybe we should like just choose what we're conforming to and probably conform to what we're already doing so that, hey, tax means tax everywhere. It's not tax amount and tax there or tax something else. It's just tax, right, is the name of the property that we're going to use across our events. And he's pinging me saying, hey, this is what I think, but hey, let's get a data person involved here. And now I can come in and say, okay, yeah, I agree with what Andreas is saying. Adam, if you can make this change, like we're happy to put this into production. That kicks off. And the next thing that happens is in our CI suite, we run a command like this. Again, because we know in our CI suite what contracts like this played webcam one have changed. It gets pushed to a schema registry inside our CDP, which is segment. And so now, as the events flow through segment, they're getting validated against these contracts. And if there is some issue, you can configure segment how to like treat a violation. So like this event actually has no contract, maybe we want to block that entirely. But hey, this property is of the wrong data type. Maybe we want to drop just that property and let the rest of the event through. There's all these things you can do. Okay, so we are able, can I go back? We're able to define schemas. We're able to enforce just the conventions around them. And we're able to use these schemas or contracts for validation of events as they flow through our systems. Now, I am a lazy analytics engineer, and I don't want to write anything in DBT for these product analytics events. So with a command like reflect build DBT, I am telling reflect, the CLI, hey, I want all the schemas at this path. The raw data lives here in Snowflake at this schema, and it was collected, the raw data was collected using the segment SDK. And so now Reflect knows how the data was collected. It kind of has some understanding of the inherent structure of the event data. It knows the contract that we intended to implement, and it knows where the raw data is. And so it's parsing the contracts, hitting the data warehouse. So for played webcam, it finds the played webcam table. For all the properties in played webcam, it's finding the corresponding columns. And what it's going to do is it's going to template, the sources, the staging file, or the staging model, and the corresponding documentation for us. And we use this at Surfline, and I think this creates something like on the order of over 500 staging models for us. And I think this takes us 4 minutes to run. So huge time savings. And so now the end result of this command is reflect, inside our reflect project, creates a private DBT package for us, right? And then to consume this package, we point our DBT project. So I've kind of switched from a reflect project to a DBT project now. we point dbt to our private dbt package. dbt deps brings it in. And what you can see is everything that was created in the reflect package is now available inside dbt in the dbt packages folder. And we can quickly build right off that, right? And so really the whole thesis with reflect and what I built and what we've kind of evolved on at Surfline is we want reflect to handle our data quality and the staging layer so that our data team can focus on all the intermediate and mart transforms, because this is really where the value is in our data team. Processing raw data and making it look nice is important for democratizing that data so that an analyst or somebody who's SQL savvy can access it, but it's not really adding net value to the data itself. And so we don't worry about this, and now we can worry about, okay, building out fact and dimensional models, and now we're using these inputs to power machine learning and predictive models inside dbt using dbt Python models. And that is how we are using JSON schema, event contracts to not only enforce data quality at Surfline, but also speed up our dbt workflow. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for a super interesting presentation. And I was wondering if you've maybe used Snowplow and any of the Snowplow packages in there, kind of as a model generator, and how it compares.
Yeah, so honestly, Snowplow is awesome. Is like my assessment. I haven't used it much. I've played around with it on the side. What I like about what they do is they enforce a schema in their events collection at the outset. Segment doesn't. I'm not sure RudderStack does, which is, you're kind of trading off speed of implementation, right? Snowplow is a little bit more work, a little bit more thought has to go in at the outset. Segment is, hey, you can instrument a track call inside your application right away and you're getting data, but there's not as many guardrails. And so really, Reflect has been a way for us to put those guardrails in place inside our stack. I don't know how the Snowplow dbt packages work in terms of templating out your models or kind of making it turnkey, so I can't speak to that part. Okay, awesome. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit less familiar with how segments work specifically, but I'm still trying to understand where the reflect integration point is.
Okay, yeah.
So does you receive semi-structured payloads into Snowflake and then the state cloud is built?
Yeah, so this diagram will probably help. We're collecting events in our product, right? In the app, in the server. Kind of think about the arrows as event or event context stuff moving around our stack. So that flows into a schema registry service, which is Segment's offering called Segment Protocols.
And so that's where the theoretical JSON schema validate call would happen, right?
Exactly. So our Reflect project, when we merge a PR, hits Segment's APIs to update the contract on their end so that as events flow through, they get validated. Segment, which can federate your events to a bunch of destinations, which in our case is our data warehouse Snowflake, but also can send them directly to Amplitude or to Split, which is our A/B testing platform. So now we have some confidence in the quality of those events everywhere they go. But still, when the raw data gets to Snowflake, it's not quite in the format that you would maybe want to expose to an analyst on the finance team or someone on the product team. The column context page URL, all of us would know that means just page URL. But for them, they're like, what's that context part mean? I'm a little scared of that's the right thing, right? And so with our Reflect packages, we can just kind of do all this like logical renames, put things in plain English, and we're also grabbing the information from our contracts and using that to template out those models and generate the documentation.
So from the segment side, land into the warehouse, it lands in like an ERD kind of setup, but you're saying it's not like it doesn't have the naming and or like typing that you want to. You do the same thing on top of that.
Yes, a little bit. Yes and no. Like, if there's some sort of type validation, it usually gets caught at the registry and the validation point. But really, we're just trying to build out, like, getting to that staging layer inside DBT as fast as possible. And that's where Reflect, like, builds that private DBT package, which we point at our DBT project to that package to make this link. And that automates a lot of the work we do in DBT to just like get started off on the right foot. Does that help answer the question? Yeah, absolutely, no problem. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think a little bit along what you said too further, where it seems like you have many different events. So each event then is getting a separate DBT model.
Yes.
Table. But then to do time series analysis across those events, you need to kind of bring them together.
So we sessionize those events. Sometimes there is a case to be made, and like some CDP vendors will like just be like, here's one big table. I think that's how Snowplow works, is sort of they're like, here's everything in one table is how they deliver it to you, sort of. Segment will give you a table of all the events, right, with like limited context, but then we'll give you an individual table for each event with like everything inside. And from that, you can kind of like make a decision around, okay, if I'm just looking at timestamps and events happening, like I can go to the one big table approach, right, where it's just like the whole event stream. Or if I'm interested in a specific event, right, I can dive into that single table, which kind of helps the query. So like if you were just like, you wouldn't scan the whole table, like the one big table with everything in it, if you're just interested in one event. But if you're interested in like sessionization logic, you might go to that bigger table with all the events listed in a row.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
First, thanks for open source.
Yeah, no worries.
The other thing is, have you looked at the activity schema spec?
I have. I think that would be like an interesting next step, is like, how do I take something like this? We have all these tables, it's all built nicely. Like, what are the different formats people would want to then like, hey, I'm an activity schema shop, I'm an X shop, I'm a this shop. This is how I think about the final product of my product analytics, and then let people go from there. Like right now, it's like, let's get to the staging layer, because that was like the first, the easiest get, so to speak. No problem. Go ahead.
Hi. So we do a lot of product analytics at Postman. So I think the problem that you mentioned, that that gap between engineering and product, and,
Yeah.
Us. So I think even with all of this, I'm wondering, is there incentive enough for the engineers to go and write these contracts, and why in the first place would they want consistency, right? If let's say there's just one event they want to analyze, they don't care about consistency in that case, right? So
They don't. Or not, they don't, or they do to differing degrees. I should be a little kinder. So what we've done at Surfline is we actually assign a code owner to an event. So we say this engineering squad owns this event. If something goes wrong with this event, we know who to contact right away on the engineering side. And then we also assign a priority to events. So first off, we try and set up some configuration to not let engineers make mistakes in the first place. And like, we're not perfect, but we are definitely continuing to step in the right direction to improve the data quality. And because there is some ownership now, it's not just someone coming to the data team and saying this is wrong, and the data team being like, well, my hands are kind of tied because like I don't write JavaScript and I won't be taking that up anytime soon. Python and SQL are enough for me right now. And so really by using some metadata to assign the ownership of certain events as they are being instrumented, we can start to put like someone's name on something or a team's name, right? Like it's obvious the data team is going to be the first person anyone contacts when there's data problems, but now we can say, okay, it's this event, and I'm not just saying at engineering, like 50 engineers, can someone help me with this? I'm saying, hey, engineers on the real-time squad at Surfline, which is 5 people, like this is a very specific problem we have right now, and like here's the product owner of this event, like the key stakeholder, like let's all hop on a call and like figure out a path to resolve this as quick as possible. Where before that might be like a day's worth of just like finger pointing, trying to figure out the right person to bring into the room to have the conversation and get to a resolution. So it's not to say that we don't have problems, but it's just like trying to build this shared tooling and process so that when something goes wrong or when we're making plans, we bring the right people together.
We are at a point now that we are, contemplating going in and writing those events on our own. So, as a team, so
Yeah, I don't know if I would do that, but I wish you good luck. Cool. Any other questions? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I was wondering, kind of relating to this, does your engineering team or maybe some of your engineering teams also use this in their CI/CD pipeline to like validate events as they update parts of the
So if they are logging events to like New Relic or something like that, we're not applying this right now to other systems. We're very focused on product analytics just because the visibility of those events is not just internal to engineering. It's like someone on our strategy team, strategy analyst, doesn't really care what's happening inside dbt or inside Snowpark or Snowflake or anything. They're just like, the end product is this event that I'm using to get some insight into the business so that I can drive a strategical decision for us. And so we've focused Reflect totally on product analytics because it has such high visibility. I think expanding that footprint, particularly because I did a lot of this work on the side, is just like too much to take on. So, okay. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.